4 years ago, I sold my house in Ohio, packed 2 suitcases, and moved to a small city in the Philippines called Dumaguete to retire on my machinist's pension. Everybody warned me leaving would be the hard part. Nobody warned me that coming back would be harder. So what do you do when the very visa that finally lets you belong somewhere is the same one that quietly locks the door behind you? My name is Harlan Voss. I spent 35 years running a lathe at a parts plant outside Dayton, Ohio. When I retired at 64, I had a pension check, a paid-off truck, and about $200,000 sitting in a savings account that was barely earning anything. A man at my church told me my dollar would go 4 times as far here. He was right about that part. My rent is $280 a month for a 2-bedroom house with a mango tree in the yard. A full dinner for 2 at the wet market costs less than a value meal back home. I married a woman named Elena 2 years after I landed. Good woman. She runs a small corner store out of our front room, the kind they call a sari-sari store here. I thought I had solved retirement. Cheap living, warm weather, a wife who cooks better than any diner I ever ate at in Dayton. I put $15,000 into a Philippine bank as a required time deposit for something called the SRRV, the Special Resident Retirees Visa. That deposit is what buys you the right to stay here for good. No more flying to another country every 90 days just to get a fresh stamp in your passport. I told my brother on the phone I would never move back to Ohio. I meant every word. I want you to remember that I meant it. Because it matters for what happened 6 weeks ago, when my mother had a stroke in a nursing home outside Columbus, and I found out the hard way that meaning something and being able to act on it are 2 very different things. I called the airline that same night. The ticket itself was not the problem. What I found out over the next 3 days was the problem, and it is the same problem waiting for thousands of people who did exactly what I did. Quick word before I go further. What happened to me is not the whole story. There is a lot more of it than fits in any one video. I wrote the whole story down in a book you can find in the pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. Most mornings here, I drink coffee on the porch and watch the fishermen bring their boats in while it is still cool enough to sit outside without sweating through your shirt. And back in Dayton, that same morning would have meant scraping ice off a windshield in the dark before an early shift. That is the life I built, and it is a good one, which is exactly why none of what I am about to tell you crossed my mind until I needed it to. The first thing I found out was that the deposit is not really mine to touch, not quickly. $15,000 sitting in that bank is what keeps my visa alive. Pull it out and the visa office cancels your residency. And getting the money back into your hands takes banks and government offices 6 to 10 weeks, sometimes longer, all while you are supposed to already be on a plane. The second thing I found out was about the house. Elena and I built onto her family's old place 2 years ago, added a proper kitchen and a second bedroom for when her mother visits. I paid for almost all of it. My name is on none of it. Not because Elena tricked me. Because the law here will not let it be any other way. A foreigner cannot own land in the Philippines, not through marriage, not through a visa, not through any amount of money you spend. The land stays in her name, full stop. And the house sitting on it counts as an improvement to her land, not a separate thing that belongs to me. I knew that rule was out there somewhere in the fine print when I signed up for this life. I did not understand what it meant until I needed to leave in a hurry and realized I was leaving behind a house I helped pay for and could not sell, could not borrow against, because on paper it was never mine to begin with. The third thing hit hardest. Back home, my Medicare only pays for care inside the United States. I let my supplemental coverage lapse 2 years ago to save the monthly premium, since I was not living there and did not think I would need it. What I did not know is that when you go without that coverage, and then try to sign back up later, the government adds a penalty onto your premium for every single year you went without it. And that penalty follows you for as long as you keep the coverage after that, 10% more on your premium for every 12 months you went without it, for the rest of your life, added up and never forgiven. So flying home to sit at my mother's bedside also meant flying home with no health coverage of my own. In a country where an ambulance ride alone can run you a couple $1,000s. None of this happened because the Philippines is a trap. None of it happened because Elena did anything wrong. It happened because I moved my whole life to the other side of the world and never once asked the one question that would have protected me. What happens the day I need to leave fast? And the money, the property, and the paperwork are not built to let me. Here is what took me 6 weeks, and a lot of phone calls to understand, and I am going to save you every one of those weeks. It is not one big trap. Nobody sets a trap this good on purpose. It is 5 small locks, and they close one at a time, so quietly that you never feel any single one of them shutting. Lock 1 closes the day you fund your retirement deposit, because that money stops being yours to spend and starts being the thing holding your visa up. Lock 2 closes the day you put money into a house you cannot legally own, because now your biggest asset here cannot travel with you and cannot be turned into cash from a hospital waiting room back home. Lock 3 closes the day your home country insurance lapses, because coming from a hot climate, you stop thinking about winter and stop thinking about the system you left behind, until the day you need it again and find out it does not know you anymore. Lock 4 closes slowly, over years, as your daily spending resets to Philippine prices, $280 for rent, 60 cents for a jeepney ride, and your idea of what things cost drifts so far from home prices that when you look at Ohio rent again, $600 a month sounds like robbery, when 4 years ago it would have sounded normal. Lock 5 is the quietest one. It is your whole calendar. Your doctor, your neighbors, your barber, your Sunday routine, all of it rebuilt here. So that home is no longer a place you left. It is a place that has kept moving without you for 4 years and does not have a chair waiting at the table anymore. None of these 5 locks show up on any brochure. Not one retirement seminar I sat through in Ohio, and not one Facebook group full of expats already living here ever laid it out this plainly. Because everybody involved is busy selling you the front half of the story, the mango tree and the $280 rent, and nobody gets paid to tell you about the back half. I am not saying that to knock the agents or the seminars. I am saying it because I sat in 3 of those seminars myself and walked out with a checklist for opening a bank account, and not one word about what happens the day you need to leave in a hurry. Here is the part nobody selling you on retiring overseas will say out loud. Retiring here did not trap me. Retiring anywhere without a plan traps you. A man who retires in Florida and never sets aside money for a flight, never keeps his insurance current, never keeps 1 foot of paperwork current back in his home state, is just as stuck as I was. He just does not notice it, because the ocean between him and his old life is a lot smaller. The trap is not geography. The trap is spending every dollar and every document on the life you are building, and none of it on the bridge back to the life you left. I did not need less Philippines. I needed 1 drawer, 1 account, and 1 folder that stayed connected to Ohio, no matter how far Dumaguete pulled me in. Once I understood that, the whole problem got smaller. I was not fighting a country, and I was not fighting a marriage, and I was not fighting a visa program that has helped plenty of people live good, honest, affordable years out here. I was fighting my own habit of solving for cheap and comfortable today, and never once solving for fast and possible on the worst week of my life. That is a habit. And habits can be fixed with a system, the same way you would set up a tool crib at the plant so the wrench you need in an emergency is always in the same drawer instead of buried under a pile of parts you have not touched in a year. So let me walk you through exactly what I built after that 6-week scramble, because I got home to see my mother, and I am putting this system in place so it never happens to me again, and it should not happen to you either. The first thing is what I call the round trip fund. Before you touch a single peso on rent or renovation, open a savings account back in your home country and put in enough for 1 full-price plane ticket home, plus 90 days of basic living expenses in your home country's prices. Not the cheap prices you have gotten used to. For most Americans, that lands somewhere around $4,000. You do not touch this account for anything. Not a good deal on a condo, not a family member's motorcycle, nothing. It sits there, the way a fire extinguisher sits in a kitchen, doing nothing for years, until the one night you need it in 90 seconds. Check it once a year, adjust it for whatever airfares are running that year, and treat any month you dip into it without a real emergency as a mistake to fix immediately, not a habit to slide into. The second thing is what I call the title truth, and you need to hear this before you ever hand a contractor a single dollar. Foreigners cannot own land here, period. Not through a spouse, not through a corporation without a Filipino majority. Not through any workaround an agent whispers about at a barbecue. If you build or buy, know exactly whose name is on that title going in. Put it in writing between you and your spouse about what happens to that value if one of you needs to leave. And never let a house be the only place your money lives. Third is the insurance bridge. If you are on Medicare, Know exactly what it covers and does not cover the moment you leave the country, and price out a travel, medical, or international policy that keeps a real safety net under you here. And if you ever let your home coverage lapse, know the exact cost of turning it back on before you do it, not after. A 20-minute phone call to your insurance office once a year costs you nothing and tells you everything. And it is a much better place to find out bad news than a hospital front desk on the other side of the world. Fourth is the deposit reality. That SRRV time deposit is your money. It comes back to you, but it comes back slow, on the bank's schedule and the government schedule, not yours. Treat it like it is gone for good, and build your round-trip fund and your monthly life completely separate from it, so you are never counting on money that takes 2 months to move. Fifth, and this is the one people skip, keep one thread of paper alive back home. A mailing address, a driver's license that has not expired, a bank account with a real balance, a doctor who still has your file. It costs almost nothing to maintain, and it means if you ever do go back, you are not starting from zero, standing in a government office trying to prove you still exist in a system that has quietly erased you. Sixth, and this is the one that actually caught my 5 locks before they caught me the second time. Run what I now call the 48-hour drill, once a year, on purpose. Sit down with your spouse and ask out loud, if the phone rang tonight with bad news, could we be on a plane inside 2 days? And if the honest answer is no, you now know exactly which lock is still shut, the money, the insurance, the paperwork, or the plan. And you have a year to open it, instead of finding out during the worst week of your life. I run mine every January now, at the kitchen table with Elena, and it takes maybe 20 minutes. I want to be straight with you about why this matters past the money. My mother is out of the hospital now. She does not always know who I am when I visit. And some days she does, and those days are worth more than the whole 4 years of cheap rent and mango trees combined. What I have learned sitting by that bed is that the real cost of retiring anywhere is not the flight or the visa or the deposit. It is losing the choice to show up when it matters. And that choice is the one thing money cannot buy back once it is gone. It can only be protected ahead of time. Elena understood this before I did. Her family has always kept what she calls balik bayan money, homecoming money, set aside untouched for the day someone needs to travel for a funeral or a birth or a sickness, no matter how tight the month has been otherwise. I used to think that was old-fashioned. I do not think that anymore. I think it is the smartest thing anyone in this house has ever done with a dollar. And I think a lot of families back in Ohio used to keep something similar, a coffee can or a cigar box with emergency cash in it, before everybody decided that was old-fashioned too. Maybe it was never old-fashioned. Maybe it was just correct and we forgot why. I am not telling you to sell your plane ticket to paradise and stay put in the cold. I am 4 years in and I am not leaving. Elena is not leaving. This is our life now, mango tree and all, and I would make the same move again tomorrow. What I would not do again is make that move with no bridge back to the people I love. Because paradise stops feeling like paradise the moment somebody you love needs you and you cannot get there. A retirement that only works while nothing goes wrong is not a retirement plan, it is a bet. And I do not like betting on my own mother's health. So here is what I want you to do tonight, not next week, tonight. Open a separate account, online banks take 10 minutes, and put in the price of one plane ticket home. Today's price, not last year's price. Do not touch it. Let it sit there like insurance you hope you never use. Tell me in the comments where home is for you, and whether you already have that ticket money set aside, or whether tonight is the night you finally start it. I read every comment on this channel, and I want to know how many of you are one flight away from someone who needs you. And how many of you, like me 4 years ago, have never once done the math on what getting there would actually take. Next time, I am going to show you the exact paperwork checklist Elena and I built after all this. The one page that keeps my Ohio life alive from 9,000 miles away. And there is one document on that list that almost nobody thinks to renew until it is already too late. The kind of document that sits in a drawer for years, doing nothing. Right up until the 1 week, it is the only thing standing between you and the person you love.